will not be joining us tonight. He's desperately trying to get the rest of his crops off before the next rain hits. He did turn in his report, so we have that. Brenda is out, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So would you go ahead and please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes. Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Okay. Brenda has been out of town for the last week at a conference, so is there a motion to excuse her?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? If not, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes. Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
You want to talk to me?
We're good, thank you.
Okay, in front of you, you do have the minutes from October 25th. Take a few minutes and look over them. Again, as Melissa said, it's the one that was laying on top. There was a correction made on the old business part of it.
I move to accept the minutes. Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes. Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
In your packet, we also have October 2021 bank reconciliation. We will need approval for that, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions for Melissa? Okay, hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes.
Okay, we also have the approval of the October 2021 paid vouchers, which is also in your packet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes. Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
And we also have the gas and ERU reconciliation as well. We did remove the ERUs for the David Courtright house that was already sent to the auditor. We received payment from that estate for both the ERUs and for the guys mowing. So it was about $3,500 over time. That's been taken off.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Schroll?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing? Yes.
Okay, I would like to welcome everyone here this evening. It's good to see everyone, although it's so darn dark. I said, if you see my head go down, it's past my bedtime. We're going to start out then with Tim and Paulette from Hogemeyer. We had some questions. I know that Joe had contacted you and just kind of want to get a brief overview of where things stand and where we go from here.
Okay. You wanna talk about project design, or do you wanna do grants first?
Either one.
Okay.
Point.
I'll just do a brief update on the design, and I did wanna drop off the easement for Hearthside.
Okay.
I have not sent this to them for review. I didn't know if your solicitor wanted to review it
Oh,
first
yeah.
and prepare the easement. Otherwise, that's ready to go. Design wise, we are, I'm gonna say 80–90% done with the interceptor part, or the phase one part, not the railroad part. Depending on how you wanna proceed with the funding, will depend on how we want to proceed with the final design. As you know, you did not get critical infrastructure funding, but you still have your EPA loan to proceed with the construction if you wanted to do so. I'll let Paulette get into the details of the funding, but your OPWC application for the railroad crossing is still out there. Even if it's approved, you wouldn't be able to begin that portion of the project until after July 1st. So, if you wanna proceed with just the loan, then we'll probably schedule some type of review meeting with you in the next 30 to 60 days. Still waiting to hear back from CSX on the permit for crossing their property. But as design wise, as far as the phase one portion is, we're close to being ready to go out to bid on that. Now, we still have the supply chain issues, we still have increase in cost. Whether that improves a year from now or 6 months from now, I don't know. But you do have mechanisms in place to proceed if you choose to do that. It's just loan money and not grant money.
Questions for Pam on that?
Do you have a grant writer, or do you write your grants yourself?
We have a grant writing team.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a grant writing team in the office, and so yeah, I wanted to recap a little bit of at least what I've been around that we've been working on. So the critical infrastructure application was not funded. So here's a little background. There were 43 applications received by the state and 13 were able to be funded. They gave away every penny that they had budgeted. They did provide us with some feedback of some additional information that they'd like to see if we choose to resubmit the application. They'd like to have some additional supporting documentation, talking about the issues and how they're actually affecting people's properties. So they're looking if there have been any insurance claims, letters from folks that we can attach, photos that show water not just maybe standing on a roadway or in a lawn, but actually in a garage or touching a house. So they're looking at it to be something very impactful. And then we'll also be talking in the application, if we resubmit it, we'll be talking a little bit more about the phasing. And so this is phase one. This is the main way to get the water gets out of town, but what are the phases after that? So they did want to know, once the main is in, once that trunk line's in, where's the second phase, where's the third phase, and what's the overall plan to address the whole community. So that program is out there, you're still eligible, we got some great feedback, and if we can get some help from residents, that would be wonderful, so we can resubmit. That would be in April, and then the state would start reviewing them in June, because their money gets replenished June 15th.
This design have contingencies for further future developments?
I'm sorry?
Does this design you're working on have contingencies for future developments?
Yes. Well, I mean, the phase one interceptor is a defined area. It does not go beyond the phase one limits. There are other phases in the, there's part one of phase, or the Church Street interceptor, and part two of the Church Street interceptor. If there are future developments that would tie into those are not taken into account at this point, but there are other interceptor projects that would take those into account.
There's like 9 phases, right?
Something like that, yeah.
There's 3 major trunks.
Right.
And then all of the laterals going into those, and then there's an additional 3 separate areas. There's a Raider Creek, Meadows, and one other one. There's 3.
Yeah, I think all the maps are still back there, right?
They are.
I
Paulette,
haven't looked at
Mhm.
it.
what was that amount again? Was that 500 we applied for?
Yep, 500,000. It's not worth it if you don't ask for the whole thing that they're able to give.
So we think that the 13 that were funded had asked for 500 each?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then, would we, let's say we resubmit it and
Mhm.
we get that, would we have it in time to help pay for that or not?
It depends when you actually want to go to construction and bid. An application that's submitted in June, as we found out this year, the notifications, the awards aren't really made until about February or
Right.
March. So it's a long delay. But if there's another phase of the project that you'd like to make the $500,000 application for, you are income eligible, and if we can provide the support showing that there is damage from flooding incidents, I think you absolutely should resubmit.
Oh, I agree. Of the 43, were any of them ones that you guys had done and submitted?
Yes, there was one, I'll have to double check
That's
where
fine.
it is. It's more on the eastern side of the state,
Okay.
yeah.
Smaller villages, bigger villages?
A mix actually. Defiance County received some funding for a small area that is technically now unincorporated to do some wastewater improvements. And then we have communities up to the size of about 5,000 that have received funding as well. But no, none of the big guys. Toledo, Columbus, those folks cannot compete for this money. But with all the small villages that are out there, it depends who submits every round.
So you would resubmit in April or June? I'm a little confused.
No,
there.
we have to get paperwork in by June. Or we have to get paperwork in by April. They start reviewing them in June.
Okay.
Because we have to go through the county, and they're actually the ones that submit on your behalf. We provide them the support material. And we work with Lizzie on that over at Regional Planning. And then your OPWC application is still pending. It wasn't funded at the local level. We didn't anticipate it being funded at the local level. It's structured for the small government fund. And the small government fund is specifically earmarked for communities that are 5,000 people or less.
So is that at the state level now then?
Yep.
Okay.
It's gone down to the state, and there will be a meeting. We don't have dates for them yet, but they'll start to review those small government applications. And the county engineer did rank that as his number 1 priority when he forwarded it down for consideration. Now, the other kind of crazy money that's out there is that House Bill 168 money. It's the American Recovery Plan Act. I think that's the name of it at this point. It's ARPA. And the governor set aside $250 million of the COVID money that the state of Ohio received to re-grant to communities across the state for different projects. So they've announced, they've guaranteed that every county is going to receive at least one project being funded. And at this point, they have awarded 137 of the 250 million that's available. So there's still 113 million out there. So we'll just keep waiting to see how that application does. That's a one-shot deal. We hope there's no more COVID money coming.
And is that what Lizzie is working with to investigate the fire
Yes,
and?
well,
PMP?
no, I don't think so.
You don't think that's an
a
American
this is
Recovery?
that was
She and I
Is
talked
that
about
what-
that. That is,
What I thought it was.
it all gets so confusing.
Right.
I mean, you need a roadmap for these things. Lizzie is looking at the CDBG COVID money. there's some money specifically set aside through that program to help with improvements, to address COVID in public facilities.
Safety and.
Yeah, safety,
fire.
yep. Like,
Yeah.
you could replace your air handling system if you wanted to upgrade it to one that has the germ killing in it. You can put in partition walls, you can do, decontamination areas and fire stations. I did ask the state already if they'd just pay for a new fire station or help pay for a new fire station or EMS building, and they said no. We will only help with portions that directly were and are impacted by COVID. But some money is certainly better than no money.
So this House Bill 168, has anyone in Hancock County applied for that, do you know?
4 people in Hancock County applied for that. Was it 4 or 5? Okay. 4 or 5 applied for that. You guys were one of them. Finley was one of them. And Finley has received, 2 days ago, $1.8 million for water plant improvements.
So if they're only doing one per county, we're done.
All 88 counties have received some funding at this point, so it's just kind of a grab to see who is going to get a second round or maybe even a third round of funding from that. As I said, there is still 1 million or 113 million left on the table.
How about the Nature Works? Have we heard anything on that one yet?
Tim Robinson at the state of Ohio doesn't talk to me anymore because I have emailed him weekly the past 3 weeks. He said that the director does have the recommendations and the announcements should be very soon. And oddly enough, I looked back through Facebook, and 2 years ago the announcement was made yesterday. So we're
Probably right at
definitely
time.
right in that spot, so watch your email because they will send you a notification prior to making the announcement for the press release.
So, it sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, is the only way that we can proceed with this project would be to be borrowing all funds. Is that correct?
To proceed at this very moment with phase 1 of the Church Street Interceptor would be to proceed with your loan, with the House Bill 168 pending, they could make that announcement
Well,
anytime.
how much of that 1.4 pending is, what's our possibility of getting from the HB 168? We don't know. So,
No, you don't
so
know.
as I said, to me, you're looking at borrowing $1.4 million. I
And
don't know.
you have a construction loan with the EPA to proceed with the project.
Is that 0% interest?
It's 0 or it's less than 0.5%. I'll have to
Well,
look and see what.
A quick figure in my mind would tell me that $1.4 million over a 30-year note, is that 30 or 40 years?
It's 10, 20, or 30.
Well, over 30 is probably gonna be, you're looking at $50,000 a year, rough numbers. Is that pretty close?
You're
that's
very close, $47,000 a year.
At 0%, right?
At 0%.
Okay, so at 0.5%, it's gonna be a little more, obviously. But yeah, so, my problem with that, or my thought on that is, if this is how we have to proceed with this, that $50,000 a year payment, I don't know how much more the village can afford, other than that payment.
Will be
I know we're losing or dropping that,
the pool,
pool we go
which
in
is
away,
42 plus the car for the PD. been 12.
Yeah, but at some point you may have to run into another loan for the pool, right? Correct? Get that up to,
Right now, it's moving along, but
And what does your stormwater fund generate annually?
the ERUs,
I'm gonna say 60, 60 a half,
I was thinking
Yeah.
30 a half
and
and
30 a half,
60 a
60,
year.
60 a year, because 2 years would be 120. I remember the conversation.
Okay.
So that would definitely be able to use to help pay that loan.
Once we get done with what we're using it for
To
now.
me,
Yeah.
to me then, but again, you're tying up that 50 grand a year for 40, 30 or 40 years, whatever. And then we're looking at continuing this project, stays phase by phase by phase. If we gotta do this each time, it looks to me like it's not gonna be too long before you get behind the 8 ball. That's my
Not gonna
personal
be
opinion.
long. No. You'll never, if we don't get one, or do not get grants, right? And we never know what the next grant coming out will be. I mean,
Yeah, that's the real challenge because the programs change. Right now, the one that you were always eligible to apply for is OPWC, and that's the annual opportunity. And then critical infrastructure is one that we can continue to pursue, if not for this phase, for a future phase.
when does the decision need to be made, whether to proceed now or wait to see if that grant comes through? Or is that up to us?
Which grant are you referring to? The House Bill, 168?
Mm.
Well, that's a one-time program that we have no idea when they make the awards and when they're gonna make the next round of awards, so that's kind of a moving target. I mean, we can get the plans ready so that they're, like they say, shovel ready, so that they're sitting on the shelf here, ready to go. We could have that done by the first of the year, which would be a good time to bid. And give us a couple more months to find out, if you've got any funding available.
I would expect the balance of that House Bill 168 money will be announced before the first of the year. And there is another opportunity that you have that I don't think we've talked about before, is the capital budget. You can work with your state legislators to see if they would be willing to put in an earmark specifically for your project. I will say generally they're not great big fans of true infrastructure projects, oddly enough. They really prefer to fund things like parks and community centers. But there is absolutely no harm in asking your elected officials to consider putting in an earmark for you.
is this like a line item in,
Yep.
what is it? Okay.
In the budget that they start debating in January. I would suggest that we work through Hancock Regional Planning. They probably know the process because every one of the state legislators is different. Some have a form you fill out, some want a little white paper with pictures and descriptions. So we can certainly reach out to Hancock Regional Planning to find out what the processes are for your legislators. It won't hurt to ask. The worst they can do is say no. If you cry a little bit, it may help too.
Okay, well, let's bring really good news the next time. I mean, I'm great that the plans are getting that close. I mean, at least you are ready to go. If a new grant pops up in the meantime, I think that's what we were banking on, some of those other ones. So we do have a chance at some additional House Bill 168 and also OPWC, which is at the state level, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the OPWC at the state level, do you remember how much that one was for? I wanna say
I was gonna say 197 pops into my
I was
mind, but,
thinking 200,000,
but
so.
give me a second, cause I know we have it written down. Somewhere. Oh, 209, 50, or 209,000, yep, 209,000.
That would help.
Tim, what do you think, what, I mean, you know, it's a rhetorical question, but, is this, I mean, what are you seeing or hearing or thinking? I mean, if we get delayed somehow by funding or whatever, for a year, I mean, obviously, this 1.4 million project's gonna turn into a $1.8 million project, or 1.9, or 2.1, or, I mean.
Vertical construction is the real escalated price right now. I mean, they're looking
Okay.
at 30 to 50% increase in material costs.
Well, I've heard some of those
For
things
vertical
like that,
construction. Roadway construction, contractors are telling me 10 to 15%. If the supply chain gets, you know, catches up, a year from now, it may be less expensive. So, you know, you've got two avenues to follow. Do we go now and do the loan and get the first phase done so that we're at least accomplishing something? And then, you know, you're right, Joe, you can't move any farther without grant money. Or do you wait till you get a grant for each phase to, you know, double your efforts essentially? So there's two theories following that, but like storm sewer, roadway construction, not nearly the impact that buildings and lumber and things like that are, but still up.
As far as engineering fees, or, I mean, would you, a ballpark figure, are we within 75%, 80%, or of what, for this part of this project, or, I mean, I know you don't have the, or is that all, I mean, I guess I'm asking, yeah, are the engineering fees?
It's not tied to construction cost. We gave you a price to design the project, and that's the price that we are honoring.
Right, but yeah, I mean, so that's not going to increase?
No. Not unless the scope changes or you ask us to do something different.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we would come in and meet with you and the mayor and Greg and whoever next month sometime for a preliminary design review meeting, saying this is the layout, this is 90% complete. Are you happy with it? Is there anything you wanna change, or anything you wanna tweak? And then we would go ahead and prepare the final plans and bid documents. Well, depending on the funding, we probably can't complete the bid documents, because who's funding the project will force our hand on that, but we could be ready in January.
Is there, if we go ahead with a loan, is there any way that the grant funding can be used to pay for that loan?
No.
I didn't think so.
How long can you sit on that grant money if we get awarded it?
Usually 2 years. I think it's 24 months to expend it, or yeah, I think it's 24 months to expend.
The OPWC, we pushed out until 2023, just because that was allowable, and we didn't know, we wanted it to coincide with the rest of the project. So you have some leeway there if you're funded.
And how long do you think the first phase will take to complete?
Probably 4 months of actual construction. It's probably gonna be 6 months by the time they mobilize and clean up and seed everything and come back and do punch list items and things. So you're in that 4 to 6 month range.
And then can we be turned around and ready to do another project in 6 months, so we can have, spend that money within the 2-year allotment?
You're talking about
If
like
we
a
did-
phase 2?
If we did get a grant, if we did get awarded a grant, if we proceeded with this with a loan, we got a grant that's only good for 2 years.
Well, we'd have to know if we're applying for, you're talking about House bill or critical infrastructure?
I'm saying if we went ahead and financed this 1.4 million, because we don't know the status of the grants currently, and we get awarded a grant, we can't use it to pay the loan, but we can sit on it for 2 years. correct? Am I following that correctly?
You have to use the grant money specifically for what it was asked for. The OPWC money was specifically requested for, going under the railroad crossing portion of the project.
So if you were to reapply for critical infrastructure for phase one of the interceptor, you would have to use it for phase one of the interceptor. The next time critical infrastructure comes in, if you wanted to apply for phase two of the Church Street interceptor, then you would have 2 years from June, essentially, to complete phase two of the interceptor.
No, you're not gonna attract any business without a good infrastructure, and we all know, nothing's been done on infrastructure for years. We've got the cost of this project, the design already incurred.
I agree with that. But I also wonder that, again, we weren't planning on a $50,000 a year payment.
You know,
We were counting on about half of that.
I understand that,
Well, then.
and I'd like to go back to 90 when we had over $6 million in
Yeah.
But we don't have that. But where you're not gonna attract new business unless you go ahead.
But you can't bankrupt the village either in the process.
No, but we're not spending up to close to $400,000 for police protection either, as we did.
I know, but
I think we sit down and crunch the numbers once Tim comes in with the actual thing, and maybe in the meantime, we'll hear something on one of the other 2 grants. Okay?
Now, this 1.4 million this is set in stone, there's nothing that can come along in this first part of the project that could bump it up, like if they run into something underground.
I'm hoping it's the other way around, that we were ultra conservative in the estimate and it actually comes in less. We took into account some potential rises in construction costs and things like that. You don't wanna bid it in May or June and not have much of the construction season, so there's some thought that needs to go into when you bid it. You could also bid it in the fall and have them start outside of town and then maybe finish it in the spring. That way a contractor knows he's got a job on the books for the first thing in the spring. So we can work with prices based on when we bid it, but hopefully I'm high and not low.
Didn't you add like 100,000 contingency in it?
Yeah,
at one time?
we had 10% and then added on top of that.
I think the whole entire, all the phases, when Peterman did it, I think it was 11.3 million, and obviously that's been since 2017-18, and look where we're at already.
and historically, just for knowledge, why didn't they proceed when Peterman did it? Just 'cause we didn't have the money
No
or?
money.
That's what I figured, I just asked him.
You have to have the plan in place before you can start the utility. And then obviously you need at least a full year of the utility to have the funds in place to proceed with the project. Did you want us to reach out to the county about a capital budget request, just to see what they say?
Sure, and I'll tell you what, when I was in education, we had a line item, met with the senators, representatives, and got it. I never had heard of it before, so that's why I'm like, oh, okay. I would reach out and see,
Okay,
it won't hurt.
yeah, heck no. You have the plans, you have a project description, you can demonstrate a need. If we can pull up some of those photos that show the flooding, letters from residents, those things really impact whether they choose to support or not support a project.
I can give you their addresses if you wanna go talk to them, or down Vista Avenue or Vista Meadows.
The next 2 days I'm pretty full, but Thursday I might have time.
I understand where they're coming from though.
Yeah.
Well, they were here
let them know, I'm sure they'll be glad to submit whatever you need.
Oh, heck yeah, oh, we
You
can give
know.
them an email address of who to write to support requesting this funding.
It's not gonna get any cheaper, you know that.
No.
It's gotta be started sometime.
They postpone things, sometimes you just add them to the kettle, because price goes up.
It's not gonna be any cheaper.
Sometimes it's best to just bite the bullet.
I just think you have to be very cautious, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
I think you can get in over our heads pretty fast.
I kinda agree with everybody here though, I mean, we gotta be cautious, but yet,
Gotta do something.
we gotta do something.
Right.
The town's been
Keep
neglected
sitting in
for
the pot.
30 years. I mean, you got people, we get 3 inches of rain, they got water coming up in their sinks. That's not good.
You know, we can't predict the future, I mean, you can only guess. We all know if Consolidated Biscuit would shut down, we've been in a world of hurt, I mean, a world of hurt.
We'd be a ghost town.
Hmm?
We'd be a ghost town.
Yeah, it'd be,
Do though.
but you know, who can predict that?
Right now, they seem to be pretty gung-ho, doing
Well,
okay.
it's a good thing, what I see is good, they're putting money back into the
Right.
company. And I think what it's been, it's been a good ship down there, they just needed the right captain.
Mhm.
And I think this Homefield's a good guy.
Okay, any other questions for Tim or Paulette? If you think of any, we have their emails and phone numbers.
Absolutely.
Can you think of anything else?
No, I'll reach out and schedule something next
Okay.
month to sit down with you guys and go over the design.
Okay.
See if there's anything you wanna tweak before we finalize it.
And I have a meeting with the funding agency tomorrow about a different project, but I'm gonna ask them if they do fund stormwater projects, because sometimes they do grants associated with that.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you guys for
Thank
coming.
you.
Oh, you're
Thank you for
welcome.
coming.
Mr. Potts, you checked you'd like to speak tonight.
Yes, I would.
Welcome.
I just want to take the moment, the opportunity to thank this council and the mayor for the many hours of professional work that you put in. I've been here for 22 years, and I have not seen a mayor or the financial records be in as good a shape as they are now. You guys took over, and the financial records were a disaster. And he spent months putting it together at no pay, just because you felt an obligation to the village. And I don't think they're gonna come up with another council that's worked at it like you guys have.
Thank you. They've worked hard. They all have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have it headed in the right direction.
Bye. Have a good night.
No one else marked that they wanted to speak tonight? Okay, moving on. Committee reports, I do not believe we have any tonight. Old business. New business. I did put on there, Christmas for employees. In the past, council has made a motion to spend an amount to provide, employees, usually it's a ham. Usually, I've been the one that's picked them up when they're on sale at Myers, and I'd be happy to do that again if they have them and they're on sale, but, we're keeping it under $1,000 like someone else had, so usually it comes in about $100, but I don't know what hams are gonna be, so I'm thinking if you make it to max out at 200, I can keep it under that.
I would move that we do whatever we did last year, the same.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, I will watch the flyers. Do you wanna call the roll on that, please?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ewing?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mr. Schroll,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Council reports, do you have anything for this evening, Greg?
No. No.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
I don't have anything, but did see that they started working on Courtwright's house today, so that might start looking a little better.
Where'd I say they were from? Akron? It's an LCC, maybe out of Akron or Canton.
Yeah.
Does it seem like somebody's just remodeling that to flip it? Is that the
That
general
would be my guess,
consensus?
but in the documentation from the court that stated how much everyone had submitted to get back, it did give their address. So, that's good. Maybe they'll mow it.
Maybe cut down some trees so you can see around the corner.
Pardon?
And maybe cut down some bushes so you can see around the
Well,
corner.
Jared did cut that one by the flagpole some. You could not see.
No, you could not.
And I
It was a
said,
hazard.
just trim it. And he trimmed it. He didn't cut it, he trimmed. Joe, do you have anything?
I don't have any tonight, thanks.
Jim?
No.
Midge?
We will be having planning and zoning, next week on the 15th at 3:30. We will have the lawyer here from the new Rolling Meadows, to discuss zoning. We will only be discussing zoning. We have invited the property owners that surround that area. I've also invited, the fire chief and ambulance, because I think that they have a say probably in multifamily zoning back there. Do we have anybody else?
Mr. Piner's coming as well.
Okay.
Greg
Yes,
said
Mr.
it.
Lake invited me.
And I did, talk to Greg and asked him, I know he's a trustee, but in a conflict of interest, asked him if one of the other, or both of the trustees would like to come, since that is Pleasant Township zoned back there. So, I will make the announcement at the meeting that this is just for zoning purposes. We're not gonna bring up, do we need a lift station, do we need more, whatever. This is just zoning. A motion will have to come out of that meeting into the next council meeting, whether we rezone that area. And then once, that happens, they will proceed with plans and then have another meeting where you can ask all the fun questions, so.
I will put it in the paper as usual.
Yeah, I do not believe we're having finance, but
No.
the, and that is the only thing.
3:30,
3:30,
same.
the 15th, the 15th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Greg, go ahead.
Do we have, does Greg have, or have we seen any,
Yeah, I can forward it to
Plans.
you.
I was actually gonna copy those for everyone tonight. Yep.
Yeah.
Copies. Greg and I hand delivered the letters to, the abutting property.
You have to give them notice 14 days according to our zoning that they're gonna have a hearing or meeting, so we did that pretty quick last week.
We turned it around fast in one day. I will
Yeah.
tell you, Jack Scheidler owns the condo that his mother just moved in, and this is what Jack does for a living. So it was very interesting when I sent it to him. He wanted to know what the population per acre would be. Well, I pulled everything, out of our, for him to, out of our zoning and something. He came back with, well, it looks like that will be okay, and that would be so many per acre, unless the roads, and I was like, oh, okay. So at least we do have somebody with a good head that's neighboring that. So we need copies of that and that. Okay. Then we have no legislation tonight, so we're up to you, Melissa.
I met with, Premier Bank about our current monthly charges, because I think they're quite high. There's nothing we can do. They gave us the best available options for the kind of accounts we have. Asked about a CD, and they told me that the money markets we have right now currently pay more than a CD would. So, I tried. And I would like to add, income tax as of the end of October, we brought in $1,035,000, which is $300,000 more than we ever anticipated.
Cause we were looking at 700,000, no, 700,000
40,
last year, 1,000 something,
yeah.
and do you think a lot of it is because of that change in the reciprocity?
A good deal of it is, that's a good deal of it, the
Too
cookie
bad it
factory
wasn't
had,
done years
the
ago.
cookie factory's been doing better. You know, considering it was pandemic time, you know, between you guys' planning and what we ended up with
Mm-hmm.
so far this year, we still got a month and a half to go. It's been pretty surprising.
That's awesome news.
Would you, I mean, you can't see into the future any more than anybody, but you would anticipate next year being the same or relatively close? I mean, or would, I mean,
Yes, except for about 60,000. I think it might be, stands a chance of being $60,000 less. A
but,
chance.
I mean, you wouldn't think that we would be back down to the
No.
700,000 figure or whatever.
No. You know, what I'm experiencing, for example, I don't know, I had a little over 100 employers reporting to me in prior years for withholding and stuff. And now that this change has been made and, some people got hit with some taxes, right now I'm up to 225 employers submitting payroll reports to me.
I will add too, our general fund budget is funded 82% by the income tax. So we rely very heavily on that.
Say that again, please.
82% of our general
80.
fund comes from the income tax.
I knew it was close to that, I wouldn't,
On the 2020 numbers, that's the only full year I've got, you know,
Yeah.
to go on, so.
And this year it'll be more.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? I again appreciate having, those comparisons. It's just good to see where we're at from 2020 to 2021.
yes, I can look into that.
If you did notice down there on the pool, this was the best year ever for the pool as far as loss. We've been losing about 34,500 and some a year, not including our payment there, loan payment, so. I think the hours helped. Maybe switch it up a little some next year, see where we're at, but I think opening it all the time, paying people and not having the revenue come in is what has hurt us. Okay. You're up, sir.
Well, we're getting service and non-service reports on the most recent gas cases. I'll go through those and see who's not been served and who has been. I had a call, I didn't bring them with me because I didn't want to take them out where I have them stored. One of the names was Todd, is that a right name? And they had called and said that they think that they were gonna be successful with a charity
Okay.
situation again, so if they're taking advantage of that and otherwise qualify, so be it. It's money to the village, and, that's what
That's
they said.
what I did with that other gal.
Right, so those are just kind of clicking along. Those hearing dates, remember, are November 23rd.
Haley will be the one attending.
I'll talk to you before.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of skipped over Greg's. Greg's is the second page, the back page of the agenda. Number 5, the leaf vac was out and about today for the first. Worked great. They did take the high vac back with them, so I do not believe Greg has heard back on that. talking about the map of the roads. Again, depending on where we end up with this storm water management, we're gonna have to watch. And he did put down in there about, he's asked Rob to come to the meeting, so we'll have Rob there. Under my report, really, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that we did collect from the Courtright. I met with Cassie. Oh, I missed you too, didn't I, Tammy? I'm just jumping right down. Cassie Turner, I've known her for a long time. She is now working at the Community Foundation, and she is in charge of the Heart and Soul. She came out and met with me. We talked about some of the things, and the vision statements back there are still in effect. She has $885 up at the Community Foundation that we can use, and we have, I don't know, 3,500 here. One of the things that I thought about, and I've had Haley prepare all the names of the store or the owners, building owners on Main Street, to possibly bring them in and talk a little bit about that grant that Paulette had talked about, to see if there's an interest. And I would also like to probably address the burning of wood, things like that, with those members as well. I can use that money to provide snacks or whatever if I bring them in, have a discussion, because it does fit with the Heart and Soul statements. So I haven't set that up yet, but at some point I probably will get them to come in and just see what everyone's thoughts are, and have Paulette come down and go over like she did with us in regards to that grant. Okay, back to you. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Trick or treat was good. We didn't have any issues. Went through about 900 pieces of candy. We had a lot of kids here. A lot more than Macomb kids, I think. There was a lot of kids. Last Thursday I did 5th and 6th grade internet talks and safety, like internet safety and things with them. Otherwise, I had 15 calls and 2 incidences since our last meeting.
I've noticed they, down by the Hearthside office, they got that stop sign put up.
I was gonna talk to her about that, yeah, because I don't think we made a final decision on that, correct? Or did we?
We did.
Yes.
Oh, we did.
We told them they could go ahead.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I know that he sent you an email asking if the spot was where the things are at. I did ask them to try to get the people to use the crosswalk. I don't know if they mentioned that or not.
I think anytime I drive by there, they're using the crosswalk. Matter of fact, I've seen where they've actually went out of their way to go
To the crosswalk.
crosswalk. So, I think it's in a good spot as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, most of the time you don't have, most everybody that parks on that main parking lot, they bottleneck to the crosswalk. It's when you get the ones parking on that southmost parking lot, they tend to just.
The one they paved, that one?
Yeah, newly paved one. When they get to the plant from that parking lot, it's like California racing style. It's like first come, first served, and whichever gets them to the door first.
I think they're doing pretty good from what I see so far, and they've got a lot of construction trucks and things like that parked there actually in the way, and they still kinda go around that and go to the crosswalk area, so.
Mike, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, so I was down there and I was looking at it, and of course I talked to a couple other people, couple truck drivers and stuff coming through there. everything looks really good, and the only issue or concern they had was the one on the east side of the road. Is if they could possibly out up the top, bring a bracket out and bring the stop sign a little closer to the edge of the road. Cause when the bus pulls up there, for someone, if they're coming in through there, it's kinda
Blank.
sudden, boom, and all of a sudden you see this, cause it's getting blocked from the bus.
I think they're gonna try to unload somewhere else from the
Okay.
email that we
Which
had
would probably,
received.
that would help that
I
situation.
think they're gonna
yeah.
try to move that stop
Yeah.
and put
I
it
would-
somewhere
yeah, I
else.
would agree. Cause alls I know is I talked to a couple of the grain truck drivers, you know, hauling stuff from the fields and stuff.
And
They said coming
I'll
in from the
talk to
north
him
to the
about
south
that,
side's
sure.
fine, you know, that's not a problem, but coming back this way,
I'll talk to him about that just to make sure, but.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order here?
Is there
Yes,
anything
Sam?
being done, I've noticed the last couple days, the trash cans downtown are terrible. They are overflowing. I don't know if there's a regular time that they go through and empty those. I was out cleaning the flower beds, over the weekend, and they are actually overflowing. There was stuff everywhere.
I'll
And
say
there
something
needs to be
to the
a
guys.
regular maintenance on that. I mean,
Well-
15 minutes on a Friday night or a Monday morning,
It's,
they could go through and empty those and
some
take
of
care
the
of it.
apartment people use that as their personal trash.
I don't say, I don't see enough walking traffic,
No.
little trash cans
It
up.
is some of the apartments, that's their personal trash service.
Better find out who's filling them up. We've had that problem at the park.
All right, thanks, Adam. Okay, meeting adjourned. We'll make those copies, yep.
Thanks for coming.
Yep. Who else needs a copy? Mr. Pizik, I have a little sheet here to get some info from you, please.
yeah. Okay.
Who else needs a copy of the, drawing